And now, just before I turn it over to Kathy and Mercedes, I did tell you that they were from Granite State College. But one thing you may not know about them is that they both have 2 dogs, and those dogs come with a theme. Kathy had France in mind, so she has Jean-Paul and Pierre. I want to know if they answer to French commands. And then Mercedes went with that nautical theme, naming one of her dogs Skipper, and the other one is Atlas. So with that, let's give a big Volunteer New Hampshire round of applause for Mercedes and Kathy. Let's bring the energy on for them.
Hello, everyone. Oh, I'm so excited. This is so fun. I was actually thinking that in the reactions, there should be a reaction for like a woo woo. You know, it's really too bad that there is only like a clapping one or a waving one. We need like a woot. It's a missed opportunity. So let me share my screen here. In the meantime, Kathy, do you want to say a hello?
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. I enjoy it. And thank you for having us and coming today to our session.
Just 1 second. Let me get my thing up. There we go.
On your homework, you can already tell that Mercedes is a purple.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. So welcome, everybody. You can see the screen, right? Is there a yes? Okay, I'm seeing some shaking heads. That's good. You know, it's so weird when you're sharing slides because you can't see people's faces. You can only see the slides. So Kathy is going to have to be the eyes and ears on behalf of the 2 of us. So this presentation is all about using communication, thinking about communication and how you communicate with others in your daily life. So we're going to be talking about connecting the dots being your homework. If you didn't do the homework, don't even worry about it. We're going to be covering all of that content as a part of this presentation. And then if you decide that you want to go back and hear the awesome TED Talk by Amy Scott, I highly recommend it. We're going to go over guidelines for good communication, some listening, some exercises, and finally a debrief. So just to start out, this is kind of the recap of basically what you may have missed or what you would have seen in the video by Amy Scott. So basically the recap is, whether you took the quiz on your dot style or not, that there are 4 different dot styles of communication. So it's dotcommunication.com. It was 2 gentlemen, one by the name of David Dixon, the other one is named Chris Boone, spent like 5 years researching all different personality tests and looking at different types of communication styles. Supposedly they even used The Simpsons to look at different types of communication. And they came up with this right here, these 4 different styles or personality types, I guess you could say, of communication styles. So each one of us actually all have all 4 of these different styles of communication. However, we do have a primary style of communication. So as Kathy mentioned, I'm the purple dot. I'm that person who's the energizer, the big thinker. I'm friendly and imaginative. Purple dots tend to be those types of people who are really good at like getting everybody enthusiastic about things and getting things going. They may not be as good with the follow through and actually finishing the project. The blue dots are the people who are going to be all about how they feel. They're the empath type people. They're sensitive. They may be easily hurt, but they're also many times outgoing. They can be very articulate, productive, organized, responsible. Your red dots tend to be those really rational thinkers. They many times will write emails in bullet points. They may be hesitant with new people. They may shy away if people start talking about emotions because they're kind of just straight to the point. Like, tell me what I need to hear so that we can get the work done. They're very practical. They're very thoughtful. They're also cautious, and they like to have all the facts on the table. The yellow dot person is similar but slightly different in that things like they need things to be a certain way. They want things to be on time. They're very realistic. They're not really like, you know, airy fairy types of people. They're more honest. They're kind of resistant to change. They really care about looks, and they're very detail oriented, also on the cautious side and also kind of on the conservative side of things. So when you think of these different dot styles, you can usually tell a person's dot style when you start to listen to how they communicate. So yellow dots have a tendency to say, I see, when you're hearing people talk and you say, you hear someone say, oh, I see. They're probably a yellow. Reds are more likely to say, I think. Oh, I think that this is the right thing to do. The more you hear, I think, the more likely that person is probably to be a red dot. The blue dots are going to tend to focus more on how they feel. I feel this way. And the purple dots tend to be the I knows. So the other thing that you can think of when you think of these dots are these different questions. So the yellow dots are going to be very focused on when. If there is an event, they want to know, when is this event going to be offered? And all the details around it from there. The reds are going to want to know where the event is offered. Why is it so important? Where is it going to be? How can I get there? The blues are going to know why. Why should I attend this event in the first place? And then the purple are just like, what's going on? Let's do it. So those are just some things to think about kind of as you go forward. And we're going to come back to this in our presentation. So if you have not taken the dot quiz about which dot color you are, I encourage you to just think to yourself which dot color you may be, and also, you know, those around you. And then we'll go from there and we'll come back to this. Oh, sorry. Yes. The icebreaker question. So this is the time to ask yourself, which one are you? So if you took the quiz, this is the perfect spot. If you think that you're one of these, just pop that one in. There's space for everyone. We love to hear from you in terms of, you know, this icebreaker, which dot you think you are. Give it another little bit. See if we can get to 100%. 75%, we're getting close. Oh, so close. 85%. Okay, almost there. Anybody else? I'm seeing some stagnation in the voting. We've got just a little bit left. I guess that's it. I guess we're stopping at 88. That's okay. Even if we didn't reach 100%. So you can see we have a large variety of people in this group. We have primarily blues, but we also have some reds and some purples, and it looks like we have the least amount of yellows. So that's an interesting thing to think about. And we're going to have to talk about that as we proceed. How fun.
We do have a question, but I think someone else picked up on the question. But let me just reiterate, just because I know that other people might have this, and I think I've even mentioned it to you myself, Mercedes. So one gentleman says he's one color at work and he's a different color at home.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Well, like I said, so we're all four of these. And it was an interesting thing as I was rewatching some of the videos in preparation for this presentation, and Amy Scott in one of her videos says that your secondary dot color, so you might have a primary dot color, but your secondary color is the color that you go to when you're stressed out. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So then what's my secondary color?
What do you default to, right?
Yeah, so maybe it's where you're more comfortable, is that you're more yourself at home. At work, you have to put on a different persona. You have to be a different person. I mean, we're all of these. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting to contemplate. Anyway.
Ladies, are there any statistics around the general population? Are you likely to find one color more than another?
I have not seen any statistics around that, but wouldn't that be fascinating? I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, I think this was developed in New Zealand, so I don't think it's been widely, and that would just particularly be one culture. It hasn't been widely studied, I don't believe. But if you've been to New Zealand, they're a little more laid back than we are in this country.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. The slides are moving forward without me. All right.
So, why is this important? When I was looking over the colors, I finally realized which color my husband is. So I'm a red, and I know when I give people information, my natural tendency is to just sort of gloss over a bunch of the details and get right to the facts, just to what I think is important. And my husband is a yellow, and he wants to know, he's an engineer, he wants to know all of the details. So I have to be mindful that when I want to ask him something or tell him, I have to be prepared for that. And so it's good for us to know the dots of the people that we work with, a teammate, your boss, for instance. So when they ask you for details about a project or something that you want to do, that you can deliver the information in a way that they want. So somebody might look at me, a red, and say, oh, she's flighty. She only cares about a little. No, I've done all my research. I just want to give you the facts I think that you need to know. And so it's good to just be mindful of where you come from and where the people that you're working with or interacting with come from. And so this next slide reminds me of something Mercedes just said. Do you want to go ahead, Mercedes?
On the importance of communicating effectively?
Yeah, I just went through that.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Yeah.
So for me, everything comes down to Maslow. So the theory of Maslow is that first we have to get all of our physiological needs met. We need to have our food and our water and our sleep and our sex, and we need to have those basic needs met. And we can't feel high self-esteem or actualization until we get that bottom layer met. Then we go to the next layer of safety. And so this has to do with being able to take care of your family, having a job. And this is why it's important to know your own style and other people's style so that you can instill that sense of safety. So as Mercedes was saying, that fallback is when you're not feeling safe, right? You fall back to your default sort of dot, your default dot. And so you can see that as the more comfortable you are with your communication and the more that you can interact with people safely and get the information that you need to sort of move up your levels, this helps other people move up as well. Did you have anything you want to add to that, Mercedes?
I was just thinking about how, that we as individuals, we might have one normal dot color, but when things hit the fan and when you are stressed out or when life happens, for instance, you think that you're going to lose the roof over your head, the way that you think of communication may completely change. Mm-hmm. And also when you're talking to someone, you may not know their full story. You may not know what's happening in their life, where they are in this whole hierarchy. And so it's a difficult thing where I think that's where the compassion comes in, to recognizing that you have to honor people wherever they are, and you may not know where that is. So that's always a piece of this, is that you don't always know what it's like to walk in another person's shoes, right?
So they may default to their default dot, and you want to talk to them at their sort of quote unquote normal dot.
Yeah. And we all have our good days and bad days, right? So that's a piece of it. So then when it comes to so we've got the communication piece, and then we have the listening piece. So as you're trying to hear someone out, there are different tips you can think about when it comes to actually listening to another person and what they have to say. And so that's where the dots come in really useful, is that you start to think, okay, so what dot is this person and how are they going to communicate, and how can I best listen to what they need to say and how they say it? So some things to think about is, one, to resist distractions. You know, if you're like, for instance, looking at your phone and somebody's talking, you're probably not fully focused on what they have to say. Concentrate on the understanding, specifically like what the other person is trying to portray to you, what feelings may be behind what they're trying to say, as opposed to just the actual words. Focus on the speaker themselves as opposed to, you know, looking around and thinking of other things. Nonverbal communication is a huge, huge factor in all of this that you just can't deny. That's why it has a star, because we're going to continue on this topic. Is your point more important? This is something that I think is a really valuable thing. Sometimes when you're communicating with another person, you have in your head what you want to say, and you don't want to lose it. So if you're worried that you're going to lose it, maybe you should write it down instead of cutting another person off so that you can say what you need to say so that you can make sure you get it out. Wait before responding. So give yourself time to digest the message that the person has to say before you respond. Because, you know, maybe at the end of the sentence, they were going to take a turn for a different direction than you had initially thought. And then the last one is really suspending your initial judgment. So, you know, sometimes a person may say something, and again, going back to Maslow, you may not know exactly where that person is coming from. And so instead of immediately judging what they have to say, take a step back from judging and just trying to listen to where that person is coming from their unique perspective. Kathy?
Yeah, I thought we were, sorry, I thought we were doing the, sorry, I just got a little bit lost. So in the nonverbal communication, if you think about when people talk to you, you know, they might pull a face. And if they do that, you might have a particular reaction to what they say. I know I tend to make a lot of faces when I talk, and I try to control it, but I'm not always great at it. They might shrug or cross their arms, or they might lean in or play with their hair. And those all say things to us that we may not even be aware that they are. And then eye contact. So eye contact is kind of an interesting thing, because if somebody doesn't look at you, you take that one way. If they hold it for too long, we start to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And in the world of Zoom, eye contact is sort of just out the window, right? We don't even know what to do with eye contact. You should be looking at your screen. I tell my students when they do a presentation to tape their notes right underneath their camera so that they're not looking off. And that might be something you might want to consider doing for yourself. Paralanguage. So that is, have you ever noticed that somebody, when they are speaking, they tilt their language up at the end? They go there, it's like a till, and they sound like they're asking a question instead of making a statement. I was talking to someone today who was talking, I think I talk fast. They were talking so fast. They were from New York. I couldn't keep up with them. And then if they're sort of moving around. So, you know, sometimes people do things and you think, what does that mean? So they might cross their arms. Like I sometimes cross my arms just to give my shoulders a break. Some people will get to stand up and walk around, not because they're not listening, but because their backs hurt. So it's good to sort of take the whole picture into consideration. We all understand gestures, so we won't go there. And personal space, I'm not really sure how personal space is going to work out after COVID, but people do have personal space based on, like, I have a larger personal space than a lot of people do. I don't like people to be too close to me. And I'm a short person, so sometimes people kind of like try to lean over me and intimidate me, particularly men. But also personal space has to do with cultural too. Some cultures want larger personal space than others. And you can tell if somebody's getting too close to your personal space if you back up without even thinking about it. So just another nonverbal to be aware of.
Yeah, and a person who may be like in your inner circle, like a family member, you may be, oh, your bubble may be a different size with them than it would be with a complete stranger. So that's an interesting thing as well. So here's some just things to think about in terms of your nonverbal communication. First of all, I love the chickens. So
They're great.
just had to point that out. I think that they're the best thing ever. So when you think of your nonverbal communications, check yourself. It's so important to really be aware of your nonverbal communication and what it says to another person. So I recommend that you do these things over the course of, let's say, a week. Test your body language first. See, notice your body language, notice how you use your hands, notice how you move around, notice your facial expressions, notice your posture, and how that posture may change throughout the day or when you're talking to certain people, and how that the different situations may vary. Notice your emotions and how your emotions may really impact you physically. You may not even notice it initially, but as you become more aware and you start to really think over the course of a week, ask yourself throughout the day, where do you feel your emotions in your body? So if you notice you're feeling like really energized about something, how does that make you feel? Like, do you feel tight? Do you feel like you can breathe more? If you feel bored, where do you feel that? If you feel happy, where do you feel that? If you feel frustrated, where might you feel that? Like, I feel frustration in my shoulders. If I'm anxious, I likely have kind of a sense of like tightness or butterflies in my stomach. That impacts me, and that impacts how I communicate nonverbally. Be intentional about your nonverbal communication. So once you've kind of done this initial test, then start to really be aware that as you're communicating with other people, that you want to display your body language in such a way that it's going to support what you have to say. So if you like what a person is saying, you might want to be like nodding your head, giving a thumbs up, like, oh yeah. And then, if you don't, and you're feeling kind of miffed or angry about a conversation and how it's going, I mean, you might consciously cross your arms. You might lean back a little bit. You might use your nonverbal communication to help to support the words that you're saying. Mimic nonverbal communication that you find effective. So if you're having communication with another person and you notice that they're doing something that really makes you feel affirmed in what you have to say in that communication, you really feel like you've understood each other, mimic that. Do that with other people, because other people will likely feel that way too. And then this last piece is just recognizing that nonverbal communication is really essential. It's worth investing your time and energy, and maybe even just awareness, into your nonverbal communication, the role that it plays in what you have to say, how you communicate with others, and how others communicate with you. And it's little things, even if you're sitting next to somebody and you're facing the same direction, or you're sitting next to somebody and you're facing each other, those things say different things. There's a lot to nonverbal communication beyond even just these slides. And it's really worth investing your time and energy, because there's really a lot to it. So from here, sorry. Yeah.
I just want to say a couple things. I think the point that you're trying to make, in addition to other things that you're saying, is there's a large percent of our communication is nonverbal. And I can't remember what percentage, but it's like 80 or 90%, right?
Yeah, it's really high.
And if your nonverbal communication is not congruent with what you're saying, it sends a mixed message. So I'll pick on my husband again. Well, first I'll give him my own example, because sometimes I'll be talking to someone and they'll have a great idea, and it's towards the end of the day, and I'll say, yeah, that's a great idea. And just the way I'm saying it and the way I'm feeling are not congruent. So they'll say sometimes like, are you kidding me? No. And I'll say, no, it's a great idea. I love that idea. But because I'm not congruent in my language, it's very difficult then. And then so a while, I can't remember who my husband was hanging around with. It was when he was at college, he was working with a group of people predominantly that when they wouldn't nod to agree, but they would shake their head back and forth to agree. And this is when I first met him, and he would say something and he would shake his head in agreement. And I would have to say, and I watch other people do this with him too, like, what is going on there? You're saying yes, but you're shaking your head no. And that was really confusing for myself and other people. So it's hard to do, but I agree with, we really need to pay more attention to that.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting when people's nonverbal communications say different things than their verbal communication is saying, which is why you have to kind of be astute to both, right? And for yourself, most importantly. So now we're going to do a listening exercise. And we're going to have 3 different rounds. You're going to be broken up into groups of 3 with the same people. So for each round. So in this, one of you is going to be the speaker. One of you is going to be the listener. And then one of you is just going to be the witness. And so I'm going to tell you the different roles of each person. So the speaker is going to, in the first round, they're going to talk about, I think the goal here is just to talk about what your favorite part of this presentation has been so far. So that's your goal. So one of you is going to talk about your favorite part of this presentation so far. The listener, your goal is that you are not going to shake your head. You're not going to nod. You're not going to make any noise. I mean, you don't have yourself on mute, but you don't make any verbal responses. You literally just watch what the other person has to say for 2 minutes. And then the witness is going to be watching for body language. So that's going to be the 3 different roles. Once we break into the breakout groups, you will decide on your roles. So again, you're going to have, the speaker will have 2 minutes to talk. And in that 2 minutes, they're going to talk about their favorite part of the presentation so far. And then after that 2 minutes is up, then for 1 minute, the listener is going to share the content that they heard. So they're just going to talk about what they're going to reiterate the main points that they heard over the 2 minutes in 1 minute, and then we're going to come back. Well, I don't know about you all, but that was a hoot. We had, I actually didn't know I was going into a breakout, so it kind of came as a surprise to me. But it was a really good time. we got to a good laugh in towards the end there. All right, so we're gonna break out again. And so this round is a little bit different. And you can decide if you want the speaker to be the same. Maybe this time we swap it. So whoever was the listener is now the speaker, and the speaker is the listener. It's gonna be the same people, same group. This time there's going to be a little bit of a different set of rules. So the listener is allowed to say yes, they're allowed to shake their head yes or no. You're allowed to give short verbal responses. So you can't ask any questions, but you can at least acknowledge that you're hearing the other person. And you have 2 options for the prompt that you're going to talk about as a speaker for 2 minutes. So your option 1 is you talk about your most vivid outdoor experience. Option 2 is you can talk about your proudest professional accomplishment. So again, we're going to have 2 minutes where the speaker speaks for 2 minutes about either their most vivid outdoor experience or their proudest professional accomplishment. And then we are going to then come back. So afterwards, the listener, sorry, I forgot this part. The listener will then once again share the content for 1 minute. So 2 minutes of answering the question, 1 minute of sharing content. You are allowed to acknowledge, no asking questions. Ready, set, go. It's so interesting and so different, you know, when a person is allowed to at least shake their head yes or no, or smile, like act like they're maybe paying attention. as opposed to just looking at you blankly. And so I'd like to ask you some questions, based on your first two experiences before we do the third breakout. So maybe in the chat, or you could raise your hand, what were the differences in experience you had between the first round and the second round? Did you feel more comfortable as a listener in the first one versus how did you feel as a speaker? What were your reasons for comfort or discomfort in either of the two rounds? And let's see, what else do we want to ask? Which role felt a little bit more positive or negative for you?
There is nothing negative I can say, but it is positive. Both are positive, but I like to say the first one, like with the experience, expressing our thoughts, ideas, and then visions are better than the others' expression. Maybe somebody expressed that and I cannot understand well and I cannot present well, but myself, I present myself whatever I understand and my experience, and I feel like, wow, I did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you. Did a lot of you feel like the first time, that when you weren't getting people to respond, that you were kind of like, what's the point of me sharing this story? Like, are you even listening to me at all?
So
That's
Mercedes,
certainly how I have felt in that first round before.
Mercedes, one of the people said that they felt really uncomfortable just speaking without any reactions.
Yeah. That's a pretty normal thing. I've run this exercise many times now, and it's always the first one. People are like, I didn't know where to look. I felt kind of awkward. Like I almost felt a little bit like my hands were sweaty. It just made me feel uncomfortable knowing that the other person was just watching me, but not even shaking their head or smiling or anything. And the second round, you feel a little bit more affirmed than you would feel around that first round. Another question for you. Do any of you ever go to a concert and close your eyes to listen? Do you think that this exercise could potentially be a little bit different if you were blindfolded? So, and how would it maybe be different if you were blindfolded versus being on Zoom and seeing another person? Yes. So why would it be different if you were blindfolded, or you were at a concert, or you were doing the same exercise again, but you couldn't see, you just felt it, you were there? More dependent on
gestures and body language makes people to understand easily what they like to tell, or what is their expression. So if you speak with that,
yeah.
and if you speaking together, if you have the body language, that helps. I guess that helps people to understand better.
So it can help or it can hinder you, right? Yeah. So if your eyes are closed and you're just listening to the other person, you don't have any distractions. You have nothing else to see. You're not looking at your phone. You're not writing notes. All that you have to do is listen to that other person, which in itself can be a distraction, or it could not be. It kind of depends on your communication style and whether you're stronger with listening or whether you're really a verbal person. So like for me, I'm very verbal, but I'm also very visual. And if I don't see a person's reaction and all I do is I feel what they're saying, I would probably feel like I was missing something, which is why like I'm the type of person that if I'm talking to somebody and I have sunglasses on, I take my sunglasses up because I feel like I can't hear them. Even though I'm seeing them, I just feel like I can't hear a person with sunglasses on.
Before you go on to your next question, going back to your first question, in our breakout room, in the second situation where you had the listener and speaker change roles, and so I was a watcher in both cases. In the second thing, there was, I don't know if you did this on purpose, a lot of distraction. a lot of talking going on, and I'm having a hard time watching both the listener and the speaker, although they seem calmer than I was, because I'm watching just saying, what's the kind of reaction to going through? And then just to go back a little bit, on the first round, the speaker was your typical Italian talking like this, and the listener was stoic, just watching like this. When she became the speaker and he became the listener, she was again talking
Really
with her
animated.
hands raised, and he kept still. And the thing is, basically, I think because there was so much distraction, it was even hard to hear what they were saying. So I'm sitting down, going back and forth, saying, what the heck is going on there? So I was just wondering whether like you guys did that on purpose in our breakout.
Well, every breakout was really different. So I can't say, maybe we did, maybe we didn't. But what I can say is that communication, nonverbal communication matching is actually like a really real thing. And so it could be that the first round, the first person was a lot more animated. And then the second round, they switched roles because they were matching that other person's nonverbal communication.
Right.
In the same way that, like, you know, if you see you're talking to another person and they're sitting and watching you, you may do the same thing. And then you may realize like, oh, wow, like we're both sitting the same exact way as we're looking at each other. Or you may cross your legs, you know, you're sitting and eating lunch or something, and one person crosses their legs and the other person crosses their legs the same way. You know, you match each other's communication, and it's totally unconscious most of the time.
And this happens often to me, like when you're sort of in a crowd, a lot of people are talking, and you're trying to listen to the person, and you're putting a whole lot of attention into what that person is saying, but you're not hearing them.
Yeah.
You hear, I mean, you can't, what am I going to say? You're looking, the mouth is moving, you can hear the voice, but all the background is just.
It's so true. I mean, it's so true. And so that's why all those key skills on how to be able to better listen are even more crucial, right? When you have distractions, it becomes nearly impossible sometimes to hear yourself think, let alone hear another person.
That's it.
So shall we do the third round? So this round's going to be a little bit different. Once again, because why make it the same? So we're going to do the same thing. We'll have the first speaker be the speaker again. And this time you're allowed to, as the responder, give short verbal responses. So you can say, you can, you know, shake your head. So the same rules apply as the second round. And this time the prompt is going to be, what is your favorite place and why? Or it can be your most recent challenge. So what is your favorite place and why? What's your most recent challenge? The speaker will have 2 minutes. But instead of relaying the content that they feel, this time the listener is going to relay the feeling behind what they heard. So that you can say like, how do you think that the other person was feeling during this experience that they're sharing? So if you're sharing your favorite place or your most recent challenge, you're going to have a feeling associated with those things. And you're going to share what feeling you think that person had. And then you're going to double check to see if your understanding of what the feeling that person had in that story is actually what the person was feeling. So there's your 3 minutes. Last round.
What does the watcher do?
The watcher is, again, watching for body language. See how it may differ this time around.
I clicked leave meeting at the end of my last one instead of leave room. So I think I lost my access to it, but I was in 15 if I can go back in.
Okay, I will send you there.
Thank you.
Okay, lesson learned. Better to go a little over the number of people
Yeah,
planned for the breakout rooms because
people drop out.
people drop out and like, whew,
Yeah, if anybody doesn't have audio, that just throws it all off.
So we started at a 4-minute timer, it looks like. Was that
Oh,
intentional?
interesting.
it
It's
just
a 5-minute timer.
5 minutes?
Wow.
It just took people a
That's
while
nice.
to join. I think that time was included in it.
Yeah, the minute you open the breakout rooms, Katie, that's when the timer starts.
Mhm.
And what time does the session end? At 5? Did I get that part right?
Yes.
Right, yeah. So is the person who's working for Relay, is their name VTAC Captioner on room 2? Yeah.
Yeah, it must be. It usually just says closed captioner, but
I
yeah, the
noticed that-
breakout rooms end up being a little funny for the captioner, but
I noticed Mercedes' husband is on.
oh, really?
Yeah.
That's nice. That would have been funny if they ended up in the same room.
Oh my gosh, that would. Maybe they are. I should look. Nope.
Is it Tracy?
Her husband?
Tracy.
No, it's Cy. So he's in room 13.
Oh, we've got a couple. Gotcha. Different last names, but there's a different hunt on.
My husband and I have different last names too.
Yeah, fairly common. I will probably keep mine, so
It's just easier.
definitely.
Did we need to tell them to switch?
Oh yeah. That would probably be a good time, right?
Do you want me to do that?
Sorry, I
Got
muted.
it. Good.
My dog is back in town, so I have to mute at all times when not speaking.
Is he loud? Is he
Oh.
snoring?
She barks so loudly.
Oh. I have to, I notice if I shut my curtains, I can't see birds or chipmunks or people, so they're a little more quiet.
Oh yeah, I see one, I think, hanging out on the
The little baby.
behind you. Yeah. Oh.
I thought I had my background on. I don't.
Oh no, you don't. I forgot. I think you had it on earlier.
I think I did too. Should I turn it back on?
Emma, did you get kicked out of a breakout room?
Oh, you know what happened? I switched to my name because it kept popping up. So I had to switch to my accounts
Oh,
and the background filter went away. But I have it stored on my desktop.
we'll have it for the last 20
Did someone
minutes.
ask me a question?
What was that, Tyra?
Someone asked me a question.
No,
I think
I
Katie asked
I was-
somebody else.
yeah, somebody else, but welcome.
Oh, okay.
I'm having a problem with my camera today. So
Really?
yeah, it's well, my screens are like the double screens are like flipped. So
Oh,
if I look at you, I can't see you. So if I see you, I have to look away. It's odd.
wait, don't you have your webcam? You could put it on the other.
It doesn't reach.
Oh.
With how my cords are set up. So I've tried to fix it myself and all the screens went black for a little while. So I'm just going to wait until tomorrow and hopefully someone can help me out before we get started. But
That's exciting when they all go off.
I can definitely participate, but I just feel I can't really be in a group because I'm like looking like this. Feels weird.
10 seconds left before everyone's bumped back.
Everybody's back. We should be good to go. Mercedes and Kathy.
Great. So how did this one feel different from the others? We were just saying in our breakout how much more difficult it is to hear for feelings versus hearing for content. Is that true for the rest of you? I see some heads shaking.
A lot of nodding.
Yeah, a lot of nodding. And I think that it could be like, sifting through emotions can be a little bit of like a risky business. You might get a person's emotions wrong, and then, there can sometimes feel like there's a lot of risk versus just listening for content and just being able to tell somebody exactly what they said. It's easy to misread people.
The blue people think they've got the emotions part down on that one. They thought it was easy for them.
Yes, that's so true.
In our particular group, it was fun watching that the speaker and the listener were reacting the same way to each other. Both of them were moving back and forth. He was enjoying it, she was enjoying it, and smiles were going back and forth. It was like I told them, they could have listened to each other forever, because that's how it just came across as a watcher.
Yeah, it's so interesting just being a watcher in this particular exercise as opposed to participating, because it really forces you to just watch interactions instead of being a participant in interactions. I think it's a lot more challenging, but I think actually you end up getting more out of the exercise. It is also, I think, Leslie brings up the fact that it can be uncomfortable to give feedback on emotions. And I think that that's definitely the case. So as we move forward here.
We have a raised hand. Richard?
Oh, we have another raised hand?
Yes. Can't see him though. Did Richard have
I must have gone off the screen when I raised my hand. But anyways, I just being able to give a word or two or in response to ask maybe for clarification allowed the speaker to kind of rejuvenate and regain their excitement and clarify their point. But I have to imagine if they were relaying something that was sad, let's say you were an interviewer at a shelter and somebody was trying to come into the shelter, that you'd have to be equally careful you don't want to exacerbate their situation, but you'd want to make sure you're empathetic with their situation so that you don't make them think you don't care. You don't want them to get more depressed than they already are. So your response can have a great effect on whoever's speaking, and depending on what they're speaking about.
I think that's a tricky one, because I know 2 people have lost loved ones this year. So talking to them on Mother's Day, they haven't forgotten. So somehow you have to acknowledge that, right? And some people are afraid to say something that in fear that the other person will react negatively and make them uncomfortable. So that's a tricky one, Richard. I agree with you.
Yeah, and also why we covered this as part of the presentation, because you can't take away where a person's at in their life at any given time from the engagement of communication between 2 people or more than 2 people. You have to acknowledge where a person's coming from, because it's going to fundamentally change how they communicate, which is interesting. So we sorry. What
needs to work on her watcher skills. So I'm sort of wondering what that means, Karen. Can I ask you?
So I think that while so much can be picked up in, I find I'm oftentimes a speaker, and I think I would be better if I, again, needed to work more on my active listening skills, but also at the same time, not say anything and just watch the interaction with the other staff or committee members or board members to get a better sense of all of the other underlying things that are happening as part of that conversation that's taking place, that might lead me to help guide them to a different outcome or a different process or clarification in order to get more consensus, and those types of things. So that's what I mean, rather than being one of those scary lurker watchers.
I wonder if that's where you were going, Karen. So Emma dropped a link into the chat of Brene Brown piece, and she's wonderful. If you don't know about her, she's amazing.
Shall we continue the next slide then?
I think we're good.
Okay.
I don't see any other hands.
Just 1 second. Let me oh, of course it's showing the wrong display. There we go. Can you see it now? There we go.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
All right,
So
Kathy.
Let me just change my view. So I'm not looking at 100 people. So this is just sort of a quick overall, this is what you need to do. Like if you're listening, you should ask open-ended questions, and that's a way of getting more information. Again, what we were talking about earlier is if somebody's speaking, I find myself doing this often. If somebody's speaking, I'm so intent on what they're saying, I have to write down what I wanted to respond to, or else I'll forget. It's good to paraphrase if anyone's ever been in, therapy or anything, and it's good, or gone to a training on this specifically a day long. It's always good to say, I hear what you're saying, and just to make sure that you're interpreting that right. And I think when you were doing that last one about emotions, it's just sort of saying the emotion that I'm picking up or that I'm hearing, and that's pretty helpful. Check your perceptions at the door. So again, I think some of this comes down to body language, but if somebody says, for instance, this group is so lazy, what does that really mean? Because it's really ambiguous. It can mean a lot of things. So they might be bringing their own stuff into it. If you go back to sort of the whole Maslow, is to just take some time and check to see if what they're saying is really what they mean. And again, check the body language. So I noticed when oh my gosh, I already forgot her name. I think it's Karen. When she was speaking, I leaned in because I couldn't hear her. And I noticed a few other people leaning in too. So when somebody leans in, they're paying attention. So just keep the eye contact. Exactly. Jean, I just saw you lean in. So just, check your own body language and then keep your eye on other people's body language. Mercedes, did you have anything you want to add to this one?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, great. So here's the final recap of the dots in case you forgot.
And coming at this from a little bit of a different angle as well.
Right. So when you're talking to a red like me, tell me the facts. Don't expect me to get overwhelmed with emotions. I love a win-win. When you're talking to Mercedes, what do we do, Mercedes?
Praise me. But recognizing like that, what dot you are, but as you start to assess what other people are, like a purple like me, think about like questions, asking the person questions instead of lecturing to them about what you think the answer is, because the purple's going to shut down with lectures. They're more likely to be enthusiastic when creativity is encouraged, and reassuring them as a team member, because they may not feel like their contributions mean anything. That's so crucial.
Yeah, and when working with the blue, remember they're quite emotional, so they may respond emotionally if you say something. So think about what you're saying to them in a way that doesn't make them feel defensive or unappreciated. That's really important. And if you're working with my husband, give him lots of detail. I'm often late, as Mercedes will tell you. So try to be on time. Anything else, Mercedes?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing with the blues is like you really need to provide blue people time to process their emotions and how they feel about whatever is happening or whatever you're saying to them. And for you, depending on your color, you may just not, you might just be like, why is this so difficult for you to understand? Like, I don't understand. Why is this so difficult for you? And it might be because the person really needs to feel it out. Like, they need to see how they feel about this stuff. Yellows also need a lot of time to process, but they're processing for different reasons. They're processing more about being a perfectionist, wanting things to be right. So they might want all the details. They might want to really know all of the pieces so that then they can think about it from that perspective, because they want it to be so well done. You know, they care about time, they care about detail, they care about how things look. So you might need to be patient with them. You might need to provide them the time needed for them to be as detailed as they want to be.
And they don't process out loud. So sometimes I process out loud and sometimes I don't. So that's another important thing to know is some people just want the details and they're going to go back, and other people are going to do brainstorming and they're going to think about things, and you just need to go along for the ride. Karen said she's going to take the DOT quiz to work, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, and the YouTube video is really great too. I've been now using that YouTube video in classes that I've taught for a number of years now. And I mean, it's really, it gets you thinking about, because the dots are really not about you. That's the interesting thing about this, as opposed to other personality tests, is that the dots are really about how you communicate with others. It's more about others and how you can best acknowledge who you are and then communicate with other people as needed. It's a really interesting food for thought, I think.
Yeah, and I think when you pay attention to other people's communication needs, everything goes easier.
Yeah.
And Mercedes, we had one more question from Richard, who asked, are there dot types you should avoid pairing up? Are there, is there an oil and water combination here?
Well, we're all of these, right? I mean, I see aspects of all of these in myself. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure that it's like an oil and water thing. We all contain all of these pieces. All of us have emotion. I mean, that's why we did the feeling exercise. The yellows or the reds have feeling. But, it's more about like how can you get a person to listen to you if they're struggling to listen to you? And if you recognize that other person has a different communication style, you might want to internally change your communication style to better meet their communication style, meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. And that, again, could change depending on the day, depending on their situation. If they just lost their job, their communication might be quite different than, if they just got a promotion. If they just lost a loved one, their communication is probably very different than if they just had a new baby. I mean, it's just life throws us curveballs all the time. And it really changes how we engage and communicate with others. It also changes our body language, changes that nonverbal communication piece as well.
Yeah, I was going to agree with you. That's why we need to watch for those physical cues as well.
Yeah, because they might be more telling than what the person's actually saying. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure, all. Here's our information if you want to reach out, if you have any further questions. I highly recommend those resources. If you haven't taken the DOT quiz, at least take it, share it with other people. The YouTube video is also fabulous.